All right, our final reader is Rick Holinger. His books include a collection of personal essays called Kangaroo Rabbits and Galvanized Fences, about which David Hamilton, editor emeritus of the Iowa Review, stated, "Holinger is obviously a very alert writer, uses language well, has all sorts of inventive phrasing." About Northrop Krivet's book of poetry, former Illinois poet laureate Kevin Stein wrote, "Within these lines, one hears Emerson and Frost wrestling in verdant woods." Hollinger's fiction, poetry, creative nonfiction, book reviews, and scholarly articles have been or will be published in, all right guys, ready for this? This is a long list. The Southern Review, Chautauqua, Witness, Texas Review, the Ohio Review, Boulevard, and elsewhere, and have garnered 4 Pushcart Prize nominations. Not Everybody's Nice, winner of the 2012 Split Oak Press Flash Prose Contest, that was a mouthful, was described by C. Michael Curtis, former fiction editor of the Atlantic Monthly, as brief tales compressing the boundaries of storytelling, but their very economy and Hollinger's shrewd glimpses of the human landscape make diverting and surprisingly satisfying reading. Novelist Laura Siegel called the stories beautiful. Another chapbook called Hybrid Seeds, Little Fictions, a collection of innovative flash fictions, contained work originally published in Beloit Fiction Journal, Monkey Bicycle, Western Humanities Review, and elsewhere. His essay in Thread earned a notable designation from Best American Essays 2018. He lives in Campton Hills, where he overlooks a field where turkeys, woodchucks, deer, foxes, and other critters come. He's a founder and facilitator of Night Writers Workshop, sponsored by the Geneva Public Library, and he writes a bi-monthly column for the Kane County Chronicle, which I'm sure you've probably read. So could you please welcome Rick Holinger to the stage?
Prop. By the way, it's a great game we're missing. It's 98-97, Bears winning. Just kidding, of course. Well, I'm going to sound like a parrot thanking Kathy and the whole crew for getting this group back together again. It's just an amazing venue, and I really appreciate her and everybody putting this Humpty Dumpty back together again after the great COVID fall. The 2 books that I'm going to be reading from were published in about February 2020. Just about 2 minutes before COVID hit. So tonight I'd like to read from them a little essay sandwich, a slice of essay with 2 slices of poetry holding it together. And before I begin, I'd like to read from the acknowledgments or the appreciation page on Northrop Krivet's, where I say many people to thank. The St. Charles Writers Group, the Night Writers Workshop of Geneva, the latter 2 sponsored by their respective libraries. Thank you, workshop members, for your hours hunched over these lines and improving them. And could I have people raise their hands if they were ever part of either one? Fantastic. Thank you for all your dedication to writing. Anne Vague and Kevin Moriarty for helping me and other writers promote our work at Waterline Writers of Batavia's WaterStreetStudios. Hear, hear. Yes. And my family, Tia, Jay, and Molly, Jay and Mom who are here tonight, whose love and good cheer truly gave me the well-being that made these poems possible. So thank you guys too. So the first poem I'm going to read is the titular poem, North of Crivets. We have a lake house that's about 20 miles north of Crivets, and I've been going to this cabin, family cabin, for about 74 years, so about half my life, a long time. And this is what happens to me when I drive through Crivets and start heading north of Crivets. Travel north of Crivets and redeem yourself. Drive out past the right turn, no stop. Wave to the firehouse dog. Accelerate at the dairy farm, whose fence shapes the world for storybook cows beside the painless, lopsided farmhouse circled by red-brown prairie. Beyond which, needling north through woods, dark and hallowed timbered caves, you can let go. Again, become someone you knew before the lust for more of everything. When rising each morning left you breathless, the change as sure and final as the losing desire for desire. Thanks. The next one I think you'll probably recognize. It's an homage to the Little Owl. And for those of you who've been around here for a while, I've spent probably way too much time in the Little Owl, so I know it pretty well, as maybe many of you do too. It's called All You Can Eat Fish Fry. By the time you set your boots up top the bar stool rung, Bill's already drawing the bud, the glass delivered on a napkin covered with cartoon jokes. On the jukebox, someone's quartered Dolly Parton. Big again now, her TV show and loss of weight has everyone talking. And by the end of the night, Happy Birthday will hold everyone in a sing-along. No crowd now, but wait till stores get out. People coming for the all-you-can-eat fish fry. Your choice of whitefish or cod every Friday night. Down along the bar sit feed and tractor hats. And listening to the Rosie the bag lady who comes by here and sits herself down on the window ledge beside you. And there's no better seat if there's a fire or accident in town, or out on Highway 34 for seeing trucks whine out of the station kitty corner. Not to mention, from here, seeing every stool and table inside. Even a look behind the bar, back to the kitchen, where the college dropout wears his fish vest, t-shirt, and dangles a cigarette over the bin of French fries and onion rings. So now I'd like to switch to an essay. It was a column in, I think, the Geneva Sun originally, back in 2006. We used to live in Geneva in a very tightly knit community, and it was generally pleasant people that have as neighbors. But our neighbor to the north was, in his own words, irascible. And that's why I loved him, because he admitted he was irascible. And he loved being irascible. And I loved going over and just chatting with him. I give him a pseudonym, Mr. Bud. And of course, his wife is Rose, naturally. So anyway, this is a story called The Story of Neighborhood Filtration. After a shopping trip, my wife came in calling my name, which meant I'd done something stupid, hadn't done something I should have, or she wanted me to do something now. Go next door to Mr. Bud's house, she said. Someone tried to break into their cars this morning. Naturally, whenever my wife tells me to do something, I jump to it. especially when it involves a bottle of Merlot and my neighbor's shady porch. Mr. Budd was already ensconced in a wicker chair. "What's the notebook for?" "For your story." "You gonna write about it?" "I might, if it's any good." "There's not much to it." "I'll digress," I tell him. "All writing has digressions." "But you don't want to get too far from the real story." "That's the trick." I fill this glass. Just enough digression to make it interesting. Then, back to the main narrative. But I digress. I'm sitting here at 4:30 this morning, having my usual smoke and coffee. Was it light out? Just before light, but there's street lights. I see two kids walking down the cul-de-sac over there. I figure, okay, they've been drinking all night. School's out. They come back this way. I figure they're going to the park. Then what? I coax, just like a real journalist. Then someone opens my son's car across the street. Hold on, you don't lock your doors? I do now. Anyway, I think it's Sean getting in his car, and I wonder, what's he doing up this early? Then I remember, hey, he's upstairs in bed. Then I see another kid with a flashlight over by my wife's car in the driveway, and it hits me. These guys are breaking into our cars. What'd you do? For some reason, I couldn't move. Not very heroic, I thought, but his non-action in the face of a break-in would add suspense to the narrative. I finally put my coffee down, went to the kid by my wife's car and yelled. I can't tell you what Mr. Budd yelled because it's not appropriate for this audience. And the other guy? He was in Sean's car with the door closed. He didn't even hear me yell. Been in there about a minute, so I went over, opened the door, pulled him out by his hair, and told him the same thing I told the other kid. I raised my glass to the neighborhood hero. Call the police? Yeah, they said there were probably more kids around. They travel in packs. By the time I left for work, there were 3 squad cars patrolling. I thought, hey, I could drive 90 through town. All the cops are at my house. When you saw the kids breaking in, how'd you feel? Angry? Yeah, they were cutting into my smoke and coffee time. The moral of the story? Crowd a man's downtime, and you might get your hair pulled. So we'll finish up with a poem sandwich. This is, if I can find it, this is a poem that came out of a good friend of mine, Dave Etter. Maybe many of you know him. He was a great poet who lived in Elburn for many years. And he and I became friends and shared a lot of poetry time and poetry readings together. And he graciously came to Marmion Academy, where I was teaching, to give a reading. And it was wonderful. He was very, very funny. Well, apparently, next day, one of my students had taken offense to one of the poems that he read. And so that's what's described in the first part of the poem. But also, I was reading over this poem yesterday, and I realized how history repeats itself. And I think you'll find it, because the ending of the poem suggests how often and brutally, tragedy mimics itself in earthquakes and horrendous things like that. So this is called Screaming Beneath the Ruins. My friend brings in his poetry to resurrect my classes buried in American lit before the Twains and Hemingways. Next day, a boy with brass proposes that the poet's perverted because at 60 he writes about a boy who follows 3 co-eds into the girls' bathroom. I tell him that's what poetry is, wish fulfillment. Steam released from one's unconscious mind. He says he's never been unconscious. And if he has any say about our reading list from here on in, he'll never read verse again. This morning, I ate breakfast and asked my wife how the New Horizons oat bran cereal that would lower cholesterol, fiber a colon, and cover the vitamin alphabet tastes. Coarser than sand and harder than rock, she says. Why do we kill ourselves to survive? I add, pouring a heaping bowl of Cap'n Crunch. Tonight, I watch Armenian cranes pinch concrete slabs from concrete mounds like truck stop quarter games, picking out plastic globes with 5-cent rings. 3 days ago, the earth shook at 11:41 a.m., a time of safety in schools, stores, and businesses. The deaths, an expert says, are not from crush of wall alone, but the breathing in of leftover dust. By telephone, a man reports in broken English they're still screaming beneath the ruins, showing there's life below. Thank you.